of doomed humanity.
Don't you see Ash alive?
You swore that we'd always be together. I love you.
Why me? Who am I? Nobody. Nobody. Guy from Elk Grove, Michigan. Where the fuck is that? In the middle of jack shit nowhere, that's where. You know what? I got news for you. I didn't ask for this. You think I want this horse shit? Be covered in blood 24/7? Who the fuck would want that? Savior my ass. I'm a goddamn failure.
After jumping through portals, time holes, whatever it is in the space-time continuum, being very, very meta as always, saying the wrong words that has doomed us all and sent us from Yuma to Phoenix, your friendly neighborhood host has yet again tried to toss his hat, or more specifically, his chainsaw, to Nando V Movies' collaborative playlist, this time known as One Last Scene, where we, the creators, discuss the final scene of a piece of media that has touched us. Now, I'm gonna be very, very honest. I'm gonna be pulling a high top, and by that, this last scene broke me. My entry, at least if anybody already hasn't taken this spot, is going to be centered around my favorite chainsaw-wielding hero that managed to nut up and shut up for the fate of Elk Grove, Michigan, and the world. That is El Jefe, Ashley J. Williams. Get your popcorn, get ready, because this is gonna be a groovy time.
That's right.
Before we can even discuss the one scene that broke me, I think it's about time we remember Ash versus the Evil Dead, because it's a show that I never thought would be made, and it's a show that managed to get picked up by stars and helmed by the legendary Raimi brothers and crew, as well as Robert Tapert and the handsome devil himself,
That's
Bruce
right.
Campbell. The show managed to capture the same charm the original trilogy had, the B-movie quality many of us fans adored, while still giving us the lovable goofball idiot we all know and love. Ash is still the charming buffoon character we've grown to love and pick on for the decisions he makes and the way he acts.
I can make sweet, sweet love to a woman.
From fighting deadites, demonic trees, to being transported to the Middle Ages and even having the chance to be king, Ash decided to return to the world he knew best, his normal life. Things, however, didn't go his way, or the way that many of us would have wanted. Instead of getting the happy "Hail to the King, baby" ending, Ash is now just a washed-up loser and a washed-up has-been, living in a trailer and still working for S-Mart at whatever age he is. I don't remember if he was at least in his 40s or 50s. My man is already old and still working at S-Mart, much like I would have been if I stayed with GameStop. And also, to add into his character, rather than remembering not to read from the Book of the Dead, Ash messes up yet again in hopes of having some snoo action with someone, yet it backfires, causing the world to be in danger yet again. With possibly the worst one-night stand in existence, Ash vs. the Evil Dead did what no other film could do, and that wasn't just humanizing Ash, but carefully exploring, adding depth to him, as well as exploring its wide cast of characters throughout each season. While this is no shade to the original films, as I've talked about both Evil Dead 1 and 2 on here, regarding them as my favorite horror movies, but still forgetting to make a video on that goddamn Army of Darkness, which someday I'll eventually do, but for now, you get this. Upon exploring its key cast of ensemble characters such as Pablo, the once anxious protege of Ash Williams that was essentially just a simp for Kelly, as well as just a goody little two-shoes in the beginning, would turn into El Brujo Especial with the guidance and help of not only Ash, but his tío as well. Pablo would go from being scared. And granted, he would still get scared every now and then, but he would stand up for the innocent. He would do his best to keep El Jefe in check, to help save the world and rid it from the Deadite plague. And there's also Kelly, who Ash thought of just eye candy at first, but would become the badass heroine that took the show by the balls. Kelly was a character that proved herself to not be a damsel in distress and would always help both Pablo and Ash. She would always find ways to save them whenever they'd be caught in the worst predicament known to man. This show essentially took characters that otherwise would have just been bodies for the kill count into relatable underdog heroes that we could admire and relate to. Characters with, again, that word that I mentioned earlier, depth. Something that previous characters in the film didn't really get to have, as there's only so much they could have done for them on screen. With its first season, Ash vs. Evil Dead reignited a spark that the fandom so desperately needed that would cause stars to have all eyes on them. With the seasons that came, we uncovered secrets of the Evil Dead universe, such as expanding on the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, explaining the Dark Ones, the beings that created the book bound in human flesh, and end bosses such as Ruby and Ball, to seeing the likes of Ted Raimi always steal any piece of media he's in, any show, any film, any fucking video game out there, this time with the likes of Chet. They did my boy Chet dirty, and they did Chet dirty in the Evil Dead video game by not having him in the goddamn game. For each season that came in the show, the universe of the Evil Dead continued to expand, where Ash would have to make difficult choices alike to those of Peter Parker and Joel when it came to saving the world. What would he do? Would he sacrifice his friends for the greater good? Would he make a deal with the devil in order to have peace on Earth for the time being? Tough decisions were made, and decisions that were questionable that made the show go further and further into testing the mettle of man. One of the many things that I loved, and I still love to this day about Sam Raimi's Ash Williams, is the simple yet effective attention to detail to the character, the way that he's written, and the way that Bruce acts on screen to capture the emotion of this character has always stuck by me. Although Ash would either be portrayed as some idiot character that didn't know how to defend himself,
Oh, you bastards! Why are you torturing me like this? Why?
or some bumbling buffoon that would cause more harm than help, he would still try his best to save humanity. Ash always put friends and family before him, just like in previous installments, whether it was trying to save Linda, his sister Cheryl, to his best friend Scotty, to feeling remorse for Annie Nobi's death in Evil Dead 2, the one person that would help him get rid of all this evil, to feeling bad for the peasants in Army of Darkness when he realized he messed up, being selfish, just wanting to go back rather than helping them fight in the darkest times, in the bleakest moments. Ash would find it in his heart to help those in need of saving, whether it was making a deal with Ruby to summon her demonic offspring in Season 1 to save both Kelly and Pablo from dying, to Season 2 where Ash goes back in time to stop the events from the cabin happening, to stop the Necronomicon from falling into the likes of young Ash and friends, to save his best friend and fellow ghost speeder, Pablo, that died at the hands of Ball, preventing all of this in order for a new timeline to be made, a timeline without the evil. Ash made tough choices that would still come back and haunt him, although he would still do his best to save humanity. In this new timeline, everything looked calm and perfect, but it would eventually go back to square one with the Necronomicon being unleashed into Elk Grove, Michigan. The Necronomicon at this point in time was no longer in Ash's hands. He was no longer the keeper of the Book of the Dead. He no longer protected it. Season 3 would see the return of the Ghost Beaters, as well as the cool but underwhelming Knights of Sumeria, and even his estranged daughter Brandy, and even a returning villain Ruby. Now, I didn't really get to touch up on Ruby, but before I continue further, let me just say that Lucy Lawless, Xena, Warrior Princess as Ruby, throughout this entire show had some of the best character development possible, going from a villain in Season 1 to a person realizing that she had fucked up bad in Season 2, trying to be good and preventing darkness from roaming the earth, to going back to the badass villain we knew in Season 1. We got to see Ruby as one of the final bosses for Season 3 because she played such a pivotal role in not just Ash's journey, but Brandy's character arc as well. While fans wouldn't expect the show to come to such a sudden stop due to the crazy world building this season would give us, Season 3 would be the craziest, the most batshit season the show would ever give us. Ruby throughout is plotting Ash's downfall by using his daughter Brandy, with Ruby corrupting his daughter, brainwashing her into joining her. It leads to a desperate battle for Brandy, making sure that she doesn't get hurt. And this is when the Knights of Sumeria starts to come into play, as with the introduction of them, the Knights of Sumeria delve into what we knew as the Rift, a portal to another world where they believed they needed to seek out in order to fight against the army of darkness. The only problem was Ash didn't have the book. Ruby had the book. The Knights of Sumeria were sworn to protect Ash and help him into fighting the good fight. But with Ash not putting a second thought, he would eventually get them killed. Although it really wasn't his fault, not having the book with him played a pivotal part in Season 3. The Knights of Sumeria all died one by one. I'm not sure if it was said that there were more or not, but the crew that we got ended up being slaughtered worse than Noble 6 in Reach, and worse than James Gunn's Suicide Squad 2. Through their death, however, Ash would understand more about the Rift and try to work around it in order to save innocent lives and prevent the war from happening. Season 3 would explore the war between Ruby and her fellow Dark Ones, the ones that she banished in order to take power. This season also provided much needed exploration to Ash, his fellow Ghost Beaters, his daughter Brandy. Although many fans at first were hesitant about Brandy being the daughter due to the way that Kelly was written and built up in previous seasons and the way everything would have gone in the original ending, I am still happy with what we get because at least Kelly gets some of the best screen time and proves herself worthy to be a badass Deadite Slayer. The dynamic between both Ash and Brandy in Season 3 is honestly one of my favorite parts about Season 3. While I wish they would have done more if the cancellation that I'll talk about later didn't happen, I was happy with what we got. The dynamic that they both share as father and daughter worked. And again, I know a lot of us really did want Kelly to be the daughter of Ash, but I'm fine with what we got. At the end of the day, the show is still one of my favorites out there. But now, why am I summarizing 3 seasons of a show in a rushed and possibly horrendous take when I could have really just made an hour-length video? While I would love to go in depth and talk about the show for hours and hours on end, dissecting it and picking out both its best and its worst moments, I want to talk about the humanization, the character building, the death that El Jefe, Ash Williams, received in 3 seasons alone. Each season of the show would feature Ash not only trying to save Elk Grove, but his friends. While in the eyes of many, wanting to save your friends over wanting to save the world would seem selfish, Similar to Joel wanting to save Ellie instead of letting her sacrifice be for the greater good, Ash did the most human thing anyone could really do in a situation. He would make the worst deals possible just to have his friends live rather than die. I know for many it's not the right choice. It's not the heroic choice possible. But in the eyes of Ash, you can understand why. He's seen too much death. He's lost too many friends, too many loved ones. And he didn't want to lose his family at this point either. It's during the final battle between Ruby and the Dark Ones where the Kandarian demon wreaks havoc into Elk Grove, where at this point, evil lurks amongst the living. The evil has essentially won. Hell on Earth. Nowhere is safe to go, and they need a hero. But Ash is nowhere to be found. Ash, for once in his life, is scared and has a breakdown that we've never seen in previous seasons. Ash is always this cocky, arrogant prick that shoots first and thinks never. And granted, we get to see moments of him depressed in film, but we never see him broken. A shell of a man that once was crying, begging, not wanting to go out there and put up a fight with these monsters. Ash gives up. This moment broke him, and it broke me in a sense. It made me feel for him like I've never felt for any other character. I'm always used to seeing my favorite heroes still being upbeat, pushing through, overcoming the odds, and always coming right back up after every time they fall. But seeing them fall at their worst can get to you. We all know the horrors that Ash faced. His origin story is tragic, having to again witness the death of his friends, girlfriends, and being the sole survivor each time. Being sent back to a time period after fighting the Kandarian demon and causing evil to wreak havoc in the Middle Ages, all for not speaking the proper words, for being selfish, to having to make terrible deals just so his friends can survive a fate worse than death. Ash didn't want this responsibility anymore, and honestly, who could blame him? Being the chosen one, not only seeing death, but chaos and destruction run rampant after every time you try to save the world again and again and again. It takes the combined effort of Pablo and Brandy to bring Ash back up and fight the toughest demon known to man. With the end of the world nearing, Ash and the Ghost Speeders try to stop the Kandarian demon, but their efforts seem pointless as it has no effect. In an effort to save themselves and the rest of humanity, Kelly, Pablo, and Brandy run into an armored vehicle with other survivors as the army is rounding up any and every survivor left in this godforsaken hellhole. While it looks like Ash is about to join them in safety, he instead backs off. He knows the mission he's about to embark on is a suicide mission, but it's one only he can do without losing another friend, another family member. In a heroic attempt, Ash closes the doors on himself and steps inside a tank to take on the Kandarian demon. This is where the mettle of man is tested. While his effort at first causes the demon to get his attention, it doesn't do much until he inevitably kills it, defeating it. But at what cost? As now, he's transported years, even decades, into the future where the show takes a Mad Max approach. Humanity is a wasteland, and there's only one man who can save it.
Name's Ash. Housewife.
Or so we thought. All good things must come to an end. Unless you're Ash vs. Evil Dead, whereas Starz completely dropped the ball and Netflix fumbled by not picking up the show. It was after season 3 where fans like me would have to suffer with the knowledge of Ash vs. Evil Dead being cancelled with season 3, a season that ended on the biggest cliffhanger that Evil Dead ever had since the likes of Army of Darkness. In an interview with Collider, Bruce would go on to say, "We knew the ratings were bad at the end of the second season. We just knew it. No one knew what Stars was. I would say, hey, we're making Evil Dead as a TV show. People go, yeah, where can I see it? Stars." And there'll be a pause. Not many people knew about Stars. Although the series still had its cult fan base, it wasn't enough for a fourth season. And with Netflix picking up the show, they didn't even try to make a fourth and final installment, leaving fans disappointed and wondering what could have been. That last pieces of media we would receive would be the Evil Dead video game and a skin in Fortnite, but then again, the game itself slowly died out. While I honestly still love to play it every now and then as it has the same charm the original films had for me, it's just not that playable for me. Thankfully, there was Evil Dead Rise, and I'm hoping that that trilogy is successful and able to keep Evil Dead up and afloat, because I want to see a fourth and final installment, whether it's live action or animated. I know Evil Dead isn't some serious snobby type of artsy film, and for many, B movies aren't really their forte, but Evil Dead to me has always been one of my favorite film franchises out there. Evil Dead's always been this piece of media that I've been fascinated by. Just a random guy with a fucking chainsaw, a boomstick, guarding a Necronomicon, trying to prevent hell on earth but causing hell on earth regardless, being a bumbling buffoon, yet managing to do his best to try and save humanity. There's just something about it. Is it the B-movie cheesy campfest that we grew up on? The best requel being Evil Dead 2 that essentially does what the first movie did but take a more comedical approach with some dark elements? To Army of Darkness, where we get to see Ash in a badass action hero portrayal, to the TV show that humanized the character and gave him more sincerity, more depth, that fleshed him out into a three-dimensional character rather than just something two-dimensional, something boring and stiff. This was One Last Scene, The Mettle of Man, brought to you by That Guy Frankie, yours truly, signing off. Remember to stay groovy, and let us remember the great show that once was.